Just looking at the body of work since 1990 with Prisoners of the Sun, but I'll just in no particular order. 92 Spotswood, 92 Romper Stompers, so local amazing
I
movies
love Romper
here.
Stomper.
97 LA Confidential, still one of my favourite movies of all time. 99 The Insider, Gladiator Academy Award in 2000. Beautiful Mind, should have got another Academy Award there. Proof of Life in there as well. Master and Commander, Cinderella Man, one of the great boxing movies you've ever seen. 310 to Yuma was a beauty in 2007. American Gangster, Robin Hood, Les Mis, The Water Diviner, right up to The Mummy, and Boy Erased in 2018. And one of the greatest actors of his time joins us on the line this morning in Russell Crowe. Good morning, Russ.
Morning, Ed.
Great to have you on board, mate.
Sorry?
Great to have you on board.
Cheers, man. My pleasure.
Mate, let's talk about a few things, but what I want to do first up is play a couple of little clips of Indoor Garden Party. Before we do that, tell us a little bit about this new incarnation of the music that you're producing, and also tell us a bit, because there's been some massive concerts in Leeds, in Ireland, and around the world, and even locally in recent times. Tell us about Indoor Garden Party.
Indoor Garden Party is sort of a collective of people. It started with me meeting a guy called Alan Doyle, whose music, through a band called Great Big Sea, I'd already known. I met him in 2004, basically when another band I was in called 30 Odd Foot of Grunts had kind of run its 20-year career. And we started writing songs together, and that has developed over time into a thing where we would, get up and do shows, and then we'd bring in guests, and then over time, those guests became a more permanent situation. So the Indoor Garden Party is 5 people. It's myself, it's Alan Doyle, me being from Australia, Alan Doyle from Newfoundland, Scott Grimes from Los Angeles, Samantha Barks from London, and a guy called Carl Falk, who lives in Stockholm in Sweden. So getting together for gigs is quite complex.
It's an eclectic group.
To say the least. But it's, it's a very satisfying thing for me. And I know most people think of my music as being probably my most profound eccentricity. But the bottom line for me is, man, I've always done it. I've done it since I was a kid. And, I love the whole process of distilling some emotion or whatever into a 3-minute pop song.
Russell,
I still do it.
As a performer, what's the difference? I mean, obviously when you're acting on a film set, you're not getting that immediate crowd feedback. As a performer performing live, is there something that being up there on stage in front of people playing music gives you that the acting doesn't?
Yeah, well, you see, I started doing band stuff in my early teens, and I started actually touring and stuff probably around 17. I was out of town most days of the week, doing shows, and it sort of like it was inside me as a very sort of simple thing then, and I started to do theatre and dramatic theatre and musical theatre and what have you. And when I got to a certain point with the films, because there's so much control on a film set, when you're doing a character like something like John Nash in Beautiful Mind, I mean, your entire focus, 14, 16 hours a day over 6 months, is this, the complexities of that. And I kind of, I would use the band tours that I would do to kind of get rid of that and just have a bit of freedom. So the rock and roll became my theater, So I didn't go and do the umpteenth version of Hamlet. I didn't, do that stuff between films. I just play music, And yeah, there's no fourth wall in a rock and roll gig. People yell out whatever they want to yell out, and you get that sort of connection with the audience. But it's funny, that audience has been there basically from the first time I ever played overseas. I can still see some of those same people in the concerts wherever we play now. And we just last year we did a sellout tour. We played the Union Chapel in London. We played the City's Music Hall in Leeds, and then we played the Olympia Theatre in Dublin. 3 of the most beautiful venues you'll ever see. And what's more beautiful than a venue full of people having fun?
Yeah, well, I had a look at the film clip of that the last couple of days and last month, and it was an amazing reaction. By the way, the musical hit #1 iTunes UK and #1 Amazon in the UK, the album. Rose, you've got a couple of clips of 2 songs we're going to just play a little bit of, and then we're going to play one in full.
Yep, this is How Life Is.
And this is how life is. Nothing's perfect, nothing's crystal clear. And this is how life goes. You plan, you recover, and you persevere. You keep the bad days from taking over. Do your best now, find your brother. If a heart turns dark, find another somehow, somewhere.
And Everything I Touch.
Everything I touch bursts into flame. Everything I love gets burned to the ground. I build you up to the pinnacle of pain. Another fool on a pedestal comes tumbling down. Nobody will ever love you quite as much as I love you. Nobody will ever love you quite as hard as I love you.
Quite Mumford & Sons, Ed.
Great stuff there. Hey, Russ, you also at the concerts with Indoor Garden Party, you get people up doing poetry and all sorts. It's an eclectic night out, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, over the years, we've had people like Elvis Costello, Sting, Hugh Jackman. Just recently in England, we had a guy called Tom Fletcher who's got a band in a band called McFly. You know, it's sort of that's part of the fun of it. You know, I grew up touring in New Zealand with this one dude. He used to always say to me, "Hey, whatever you do, right, never bring anybody on stage who's better than you." Given that I was his guest, I was kind of like, okay. But when I started working with Alan, we had a different rule. It's like never bring anybody on stage who isn't way better than you. And that's the way we go on it. You know, it's sort of like we want people in the audience like to be into the songs and all that sort of stuff, but we still want to surprise them. We want them to leave the theatre buzzing, saying that was, you know, I thought it was going to be fun, but that was way bigger than I thought I was going to get.
Well, it's getting massive reviews. Sold out, and Coffs Harbour, they had a huge night up there. As Russ said, was in Leeds and Ireland and Dublin places. But people walking out, some maybe even a bit surprised walking in and walking out saying the buzz of the place was fantastic. We're going to play one song here, and then Russ will come back and talk to you about the Super Bowl ad, which was sensational. Now, this is called Out of Range. Give us a little bit on this, Russ.
I actually wrote this in the Nara Inlet on Hook Island in Queensland. I was up there talking with the guy that sings it, who's in the band, Scott Grimes. We were both talking through the sort of vagaries and punishments of going through a divorce. And while we were standing there, you know, kind of talking about how low our life was, right, towards this boat that we were traveling on came this 9 and 10 foot wide manta ray, black and white striped. Came straight towards the boat. There was only time for us to see it, not to photograph it or anything. And then it flipped, it went under the boat. And for some reason, that made me write a song. I went downstairs and wrote it. But I will assure you that no manta rays were damaged during the course of writing the song. And no manta rays are actually even mentioned within the song. But that was the inspiration for it.
Good on you, mate. So who's singing this song, written by Russell Crowe, and on vocals?
On vocals for this track, because that's the thing with Indoor Garden Party. Every song changes the lead voice. There's 4 different singers in the band. And this is Scott Grimes. If you saw his face, you'd recognize him from the 6 years he did on ER, possibly for playing Will Scarlet and Robin Hood. The thing is Scott, at the age of 9, was on Broadway. Jeez. Scott toured with Bob Hope. Scott toured with Michael Jackson, because Michael Jackson used to think it was funny that there was a little kid with red hair who could sing his songs as well as him. And this is Scott Grimes.
Stop with the step you don't want to take, he said. Walk with a purpose that you won't forget. Meet yourself when you leave those other dreams behind. Stop with the step you don't want to take, he said. Walk with a purpose that you won't forget.
That's Scott Grimes out the front of Indoor Garden Party. Out of Range is the song, and Russell Crowe is the author and the songwriter there. Hey, Russell, let's turn our attention to what captivated the world yesterday, and that was the Super Bowl.
And Russell, congratulations, mate. It's a great thing, as you said last night, I think, in a tweet, that you and your mates get together. Some of those mates include Chris Hemsworth and Margot Robbie, in the spirit of supporting Australia. You must be really proud of the impact that's had right around the world.
Yeah, well, it was a funny idea when the guy that came up with it, a guy called David Droga, he contacted me via Hugh Jackman, actually, and laid out what the idea was. I thought it was kind of disarmingly bold, you know, to go to the market and pretend that there was going to be this feature film, particularly as he started stacking up the people who were going to be in this pretend feature film. You know, but I'd always been really impressed with the fact that Paul Hogan just took it upon himself, because the story that I've heard, I don't know if it's 100% true, the story that I've heard, he was approached to do something, this is Paul Hogan back in the day, that he thought was just stupid and missed the point, His basic philosophy and his understanding with his travels was that Americans liked Australians because we're fun.
Yeah.
That was the simple thing. So he said, look, I got a better idea. And he shot that with borrowed equipment from Channel 9, during the middle of doing something else for Channel 9. He shot that ad, right? And obviously we know the story of how successful it was and all that sort of stuff. And he never took a fee for it. And I always just found that kind of, bottom line sort of inspirational. He was, quite successful, and it was a way that he felt that he could give something back. Now, can we add up the hundreds of billions of dollars that Paul Hogan essentially gifted to the country, via tourism operators and Qantas and hotel groups and what have you, which keeps our economy flowing the way it didn't, particularly at that time. So that's kind of my way of, tipping my hat to him and being involved in the same spirit.
Yeah, possibly the Australian Tax Office could have given him a break along the
Yeah,
way.
you would have thought.
Deduction
Keep a
on
few receipts. And
Yeah, exactly.
now,
It was 7 or 9 years of chasing him down, and they never actually proved their theories about him. So his reputation was damaged, and people sort of think lowly of him over a contention that he might have done something which he never did.
Russell, can I ask you this? There's been actually a lot of excitement, not just around this tourism campaign, but around the idea that there would be a reboot of the Crocodile Dundee movie. And as soon as people saw all the stars that were involved in this project, if there were to be a script, if they were to raise the money to make another Crocodile Dundee movie, could we at least see a Russell Crowe cameo in that movie?
Yeah, let's see. I mean, I wonder if they'd keep me to the same character, because I'd prefer to get out in the bush and get my hands dirty, but, we'll see how we go.
Hey, Russell, just play your little grab from the viral ad yesterday.
I don't just own this newspaper, son. I own this country. And Dundee's going to learn who the most dangerous animal in Australia is. It's me.
Now, I got shivers yesterday.
Whatever.
I got shivers. I just thought, there's the voice of Kerry Packer coming back to haunt us all. Was that the motivation?
Well, look, man, I know that you know this, but I had an incredibly wonderful friendship with Kerry that came out of nothing. It really came out of the fact that he loved movies the way he did, And we would sit together, and, he didn't drink, which is something that people don't
He used to drink
often
Fanta,
understand
didn't he?
about
He used to
Kerry
drink
as well,
Fanta by the gallon.
What was that?
He used to drink Fanta by the gallon, didn't
Yeah, well, any soft drink to hand, really. But we would sit. Now, one day, for example, I think we started a conversation just after 2:00 in the afternoon, and we finished the conversation about 1:00 in the morning. Shook hands outside Beppy's restaurant. I got in the car. He got in the car. The thing about conversations with Kerry is there were never any fences. He was so knowledgeable about so many things, but he had that magical part of him which was inquisitive to the things he didn't know about. So you could talk just for hours, and there was no limits or whatever. And the things that he taught me, things that he put in front of me to think about. When this came up and they were debating it backwards and forwards, I said, "Don't worry, I've got an idea." It's sort of just a little nod to my old mate Kerry. Yeah.
Yeah, good on you, mate. Hey, what's coming up? I know you've got a movie coming up with the Aussie Mafia, Nicole Kidman, Joel Edgerton, Lucas Hedges, coming up. Boy Erased later in the year.
Yeah, that's I've got pretty high hopes for that film. It's a film about homosexual conversion therapy.
Oh yeah.
Which is a thing that's was growing massively in America, all via church groups. There's no such thing as homosexual conversion therapy from a general medicine point of view. It's only when it's connected to a religious thought process. Yeah. And a lot of them are closing down now because people are starting to zero in on them going, what have you been doing to these young, vulnerable people, And so this is a situation where, I play a pastor who is really committed to his church in Arkansas, and my son comes out to me, so I reach out to knowledgeable people around me and seek counsel, and that's what's decided to do. Nicole plays his mum, and you go through the process with him. But, this is a kid from a loving home whose parents absolutely love him. But, their process of decision-making to put him into that situation, to convert something within him that is purely natural is just, it's kind of horrifying, So I'm really looking forward to that film. Working on the set with Joel Edgerton, he is probably the closest immediate relationship I've had to my relationship with Ridley Scott with another director.
Jeez.
And I was really taken by surprise at that because, I've watched his career grow and I've watched the steps that he's taken. I've been pretty impressed. I was really impressed with him actually in Baz Luhrmann's Great Gatsby as an actor. I thought he was great in that. But I didn't know what he would be like as a director. When I got the script, it was one of those things you flick through it and it's a perfect read and you go, holy hell, this has really got something.
It's called...
working with him,
Yep.
he was so loose with me and he was so free and let me explore a few things. Because when you're working as a character like that where you've got an accent and there's so much about the character that's got nothing to do with you, you want to push out a little bit and see what you can find, and he was fantastic, man.
Can't wait to see that one, Russell. It's going to be amazing. Boy Erased, and sorry to cut you off. We are right out of time. We're about 7 minutes past our news, Russell.
Hey, who cares?
Don't worry.
You know what news is
Sorry
in this
for answering
country?
your questions, mate.
What Russell Crowe has to say.
And we haven't
if there's any bigger news going around the country
don't shoot
than
the
what
messenger.
Russell has to say,
Hey,
don't cut him off. He
Shut
couldn't
up,
let him
William. We've got
go.
Russell Crowe on.
We haven't had a chance to
talk.
talk. I want to talk about the Rabbitohs. I want to talk about...
we'll do that.
Getting back in
Richmond. Let's talk about Richmond.
Okay, that's it. Time's up. You're right the first time, Das.
That is a legitimate reason for you to go to the news.
Exactly. Hey, just remember the colour of that manta ray that inspired you with that song, okay? Black and white stripes was the thing that just got you.
You just reminded me to know that story in Victoria.
Here's the news. The Dow Jones is off 4.6% this morning. It's down 1,100 points. So since we last spoke 20 minutes ago, it's dropped another 300 points, the Dow Jones. We'll go to Scotty Pape in a moment. Hey, Russ, fantastic stuff. I love your heart, mate, the fact that you have taken on Paul Hogan's tradition of putting back into this country. You do so much behind the scenes. And, mate, we wish you all the very best. You're a fantastic bloke, and thank you for joining us on Triple M this morning.
Thanks, Ed. My pleasure, man. All
Good
the
on you,
best to
mate.
you guys.
All the best. The great Russell Crowe joining us on Triple M's Hot Breakfast.